Today I wanted to talk about something that gets brought up a lot in my comments section. Such and such person will say, "Hey Saint, go back to playing such and such game. Play such and such game. Give us more Bloodborne. Give us more Dark Souls 3. Hey Saint, ever feel like playing Dark Souls 2 some more?" And to answer everything, I basically go where the gankers are. Home is where the gank is, as far as I'm concerned. Wherever the most activity is where I'll be hanging out. Now, does that mean that I don't want to play the games, that aren't as popular anymore? Obviously not. Many of you probably know Bloodborne has my favorite PvE and my favorite PvP in any Souls game. And it's not even the one I started with. So I think that tells you, something about how much I enjoy it. This fight that you're seeing here, I accidentally had my microphone on while I was getting ready to start streaming, but I had to kill Artorias. So I was just running to Artorias right before I started streaming. So I already had my microphone on, but I wasn't streaming. And I ended up recording this clip. So in the background you might hear, off the record, Saint Riot. Anyway, I got invaded here, and this clip was it was really good. But back to what I was saying. Sure, I'd like to go back and play all those games. I wish those games were super active all the time. But having said that, I'm a bit of a gypsy when it comes to these games. As I'm sure most of you might be the same. And another thing that I'm sure I probably have in common with some of you is I'm not much of a gamer outside of Dark Souls games. I'm older, so these games are pretty much the only thing that keeps my attention anymore at all. This and Bethesda games, and the occasional odd release. But like every other Bethesda fan, I like to buy the last Bethesda game and then complain about how it isn't Morrowind. And that sort of complaint, that's not, that's not only a Bethesda thing. That's not just a thing Bethesda has copywritten. That backstab, though. So, Dark Souls fans, we do that as well. Especially when it comes to the player versus player aspect of Dark Souls. And if you're familiar with my channel, you know that that's all I really do, is player versus player stuff. With a little bit of lore sprinkled in there. To everyone who has never, if you happen to be watching this video and you don't like Dark Souls PvP, let me assure you that I was once in a very similar boat as yours. They were the same shape. Mine was maybe a little shorter, and maybe for fresh water, where yours is an ocean-bearing vessel. But I was right there with you. And when I first got invaded, the first time I got invaded in Dark Souls 1, it was the first Dark Souls game I played, I knew that was a mechanic in the game, and I knew how to play Dark Souls from a casual standpoint, from just a regular Dark Souls player standpoint. I knew how to play Dark Souls 1. I love me screaming in the background at this guy. I actually had a really fun time with his invasion, but anyway, the idea of not enjoying Dark Souls PvP is something I understand, because I would swing my weapon and I would never hit the guy, and every time he would swing his weapon at me, he would take off huge chunks of my health, or I would hit him and he would backstab me, and I was like, what in the absolute hell is going on? How is this Dark Souls? This is something completely different. And then as the games went on and I got better at the games, and then I got, more time with the games, I started thinking, and going back and revisiting the idea of PvP, because that had always stuck with me, how I was struggling to get through this game, and this guy was a total badass, and he could just wipe the floor with other players. Now, I was never like a disconnector, I never cried about it or anything like that, but I totally get where people come from when they say they don't like Dark Souls PvP. I think everybody does. We were all there at some point. Somebody invades you, and the first thing you think is like, what in the fuck game is this? This is not the game I know. But then it lingers in the back of your mind, like, that dude's a badass. How did he do that? And then you want to know. So you get on YouTube and you watch videos and you see, meme stuff where like 4 guys are wearing the same armor and they're hashtag trolling, hashtag with hate mail. And, you're like, oh, okay, this is a funny thing. This is funny. But then you start watching people who actually, do gank spanks. And people who are, like really good at 1v1 duels and stuff like that. And you start like, wow, this is really crazy. And for me, what finally drew me into that was, I wanted to, well, first of all, I wanted to know where the large divine ember was, and I couldn't find the damn thing, and I refused to look it up on Google, or a YouTube guide. So I invaded in the Tomb of the Giants, and it spawns you right on top of the large divine ember. So I like walked around as an invader, and the enemies there wouldn't attack me, and it sort of gave me like a vantage point and on how to get to that thing, which was, I needed that. But then there was that thing in the back of my mind that was like, I want to invade. I want to be the badass who comes into your game and kills you and stuff, right? But the biggest part of that is I make my characters. I like my characters. I give them cool names and give them like cool things they do. Like, one guy's big weapon guy and he's a strength build and he only uses the biggest weapons. And another guy, he's a Moonlight Greatsword guy and he's, so I don't want my character's adventures to be over just because I beat the game, So I don't want to go into New Game Plus. I'm not like a challenge runner. And going into New Game Plus 7 with a soul level 120 character or, a soul level 90 character, that's not like really that much of a challenge. So my challenge run is, fight the gankers. That's how I keep my character alive. He fights gankers, He invades, and so his story doesn't end. It gets to go on. He's still interacting with the world, the lore, which is a huge part of why I love these games. Remember, so my character's like still out there doing stuff. It's not over for him. He's not retired just yet. It gives some length to these games, quite a bit of length, to be totally honest. I could invade forever on any of these games. So yeah, do I want to go back and play Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3? Of course. Yeah, I love them all. But I just go where the players are because, that's where I'm going to get the most invasions. That's where I'm going to get the most like bang for my buck, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that's where I'm going to go, of course. But if you are not into if you've never liked any Dark Souls PvP, please just give it a shot. That's all I'm saying. Somewhere deep down in your heart, if you're like me, then somewhere deep down in your heart, you want to do it, and you just never have. And you've always been afraid of it, and you don't like losing. No one likes losing. You don't want to just lose over and over again. But allow me to tell you that no one really gives a shit if you lose. Those point downs don't mean anything. The disconnects don't mean anything. None of that shit means anything. Just go out there and have fun. I really enjoyed that invasion. I thought that guy was enjoying it too. Up until he wasn't. But now that brings me to my second point that I want to make. And that is across all Souls games. I wasn't here for Demon Souls, so pardon my ignorance. But in Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2, we had people who didn't like the change. They didn't like the swap over. From Dark Souls 2 to Bloodborne, we had people that didn't like the changes. They didn't like the swap overs. And then from from Bloodborne to Dark Souls 3, we had people who didn't like it. Each game creates a community of people who do the PvP, and then the next game comes out, and that community starts all over again. And this is more for you guys. If you're playing Dark Souls 3, if you came from Dark Souls 3, and you now see Dark Souls Remastered coming out, and you're getting your ass kicked, and people are pointing down at you, and you're getting ganked, and, you just don't know what the hell's going on. Every time you turn around, you get backstabbed. And so you say, I don't like Dark Souls 1 PvP. Alright, you obviously you cannot like something. That's a totally legit thing that happens. Some people just don't like stuff. All right, but let me ask you a serious question and answer truthfully. Do you not like it because you're bad at it? And I'm not trying to like stir up shit or make you feel bad. I'm just honest to God asking. If you don't like something because you're bad at it, then stop being bad at it. You didn't get good at the one you like. You didn't get good at it in a day. It took you a while, and you stuck with it for whatever reason. I'm willing to bet a big part of that reason was it was the only one to play at the time. That's where all the gankers were. That's where all the people were. That's where everybody who was, you know what I mean. That's where all the hosts were. That's where all the invaders were. That's, you know what I mean. That's where all the arena dudes were. So the people who don't like it because they aren't good at it, I don't get that at all. You weren't good at any of these. Now, I will say it does, okay, like I can understand you spend a long time, you spend what feels like a long time getting good at one, and now all of a sudden another one comes out and you're not as good at it, you know? And all of a sudden, like, you feel like you have to kind of start over, square one. Well, that's how everybody's felt all the time. A big portion of Dark Souls 1 fans didn't like Dark Souls 2 PvP. Because they weren't good at it. I'm willing to bet. You know, I get that, you know, FromSoft makes changes. Martyr's Brigade, Jay Blackmail, one of my favorite content creators ever, you know, he didn't like the swap over from Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2. And I understand why. He felt like they had made too many changes that just completely nullified the quality build. And I get that. It kind of like took away, you know, the strength that one whole particular class of weapons and playstyle had. And yeah, so, you know, like, I can understand if you don't like a change that something makes, then okay, I get it, yeah. Like I said, you can not like something, you know, it's fine. And then another content creator that I absolutely love, Ouroboros. You know, he goes from Dark Souls 1, where he's kind of, and I mean, you know, no disrespect here, but he's kind of like a one-trick pony at the time. And then Ouroboros goes to Dark Souls 2, and that dude used every weapon there was. I mean, he tried everything. And then, you know, Dark Souls 3 came around, and I think it sort of took Oro a minute to sort of come around to the idea of invasions in Dark Souls 3. But eventually, it got to the point where Oro's doing the same thing with Dark Souls 3 that he did for Dark Souls 2. And that sort of, you know, in between learning experience between games, whatever. It can be difficult on people that you watch who do YouTube videos or who, you know, who stream. When there's a big change like that. Fortunately, I had the benefit of not being like a big huge streamer or a big huge YouTuber, so I can take my losses, and I feel like nobody's gonna, you know, like, jump ship. You know what I mean? I'll tell you guys right off the bat, like, I'm bad. I'm pretty casual when it comes to this shit. I'm learning. A lot of everything I'm doing is learning. Now, when it comes to Dark Souls 3, I learned quite a bit. I feel pretty good about how I play in Dark Souls 3. I don't think I'm bad at it. I'll say that. But having said that, I've kind of gotten to the point where Dark Souls 3, honest to God, it's just not my favorite PvP. And I'll tell you why. It's the two-hit combo mechanic. I have absolutely come to loathe that mechanic. It's terrible. It's a terrible mechanic. Now, I can still play Dark Souls 3 and I can still have fun, even though I hate that huge, huge mechanic. Because there's other ways to play the game, and I can do that, and I can have fun with it. But after I went back and played Bloodborne, when Bloodborne became free, that they didn't have the two-hit mechanic, all right? The two-hit combo mechanic. They also didn't have poise, but they didn't have the two-hit combo mechanic. Now, Bloodborne is sort of the black sheep of the Souls PvP family. Nobody liked that shit. Outside of a select few individuals, nobody liked Bloodborne PvP. Everybody, and part of the reason, like I said, it's totally fine to not like something. Part of the reason a lot of people don't like it is because the matchmaking system, the way the matchmaking works. You ring a bell, and if you're close to somebody else who has a bell-ringing lady in their world, then you can... It's like, come on, man. How archaic and eldritch do you have to make your matchmaking system? That's just ridiculous. Don't do that. Stop doing that. And then on top of that, you've got like the older netcode. Look at this scaled down Phantom. He hit me for 1 R1, and look how much damage he did. Almost half my health with a single R1, but he's scaled down, so it's okay. They introduced the matchmaking system in Bloodborne, which changed a lot of stuff for people who liked to do random invasions. It didn't feel like you were fighting the same people anymore. But, to be fair, you could have a plus 10, Chalice Dungeon Gem weapon. You could kill these people in 2 or 3 hits, if you wanted to. If you took the time to. It's easy peasy. So, I mean, that was still there. And don't get me wrong, there are combos in Bloodborne. There's just not the 2-hit R1 stagger thing that Dark Souls 3 had. And that was what broke me from that. That was what just sort of... Playing Bloodborne is what sort of broke the spell, I guess, that Dark Souls 3 had on me. Where I just thought, like, why would anybody like any other PvP better than this? And I get it. Swinging a curved sword once and hitting somebody once with a curved sword, a fast as hell curved sword, automatically nets you another free hit with a curved sword. Or a straight sword. And as a result, like, why play anything else? You know what I mean? I can do 30% of your health with 2 single R1s with a straight sword or a curved sword. Okay, yeah, but you can do 40% if you use a great sword. And you can do, 45% if you use an ultra great sword. Okay, sure, true. But it's way harder to hit somebody with a great sword or an ultra great sword than it is a straight sword or a curved sword. Is it more fun to hit people with curved swords and great swords? And I'm sorry, is it more fun to hit people with ultra great swords and great swords than it is a curved sword or a straight sword, in my opinion? Yes. Yes. It's cool to hit somebody with a giant, huge weapon. That's hilarious. I love it. But why would anybody do it? Why? Just play the same way everyone else plays. And that is what sort of, I don't know, began the end of me falling out of love with Dark Souls 3. And then I sort of came back around after watching Stray Curtis, Project Goof, iBarbo, Platinum 7, Suicidal. I watch these guys play Dark Souls 3, and I see the way that they're just, backstabbing everything, parry swaps, and all this cool stuff, and I thought, you know what? That looks fun. And I sort of got back into the game. And that brings me to this point that I want to make. You make your own fun in these games. You really do. So, if you're one of these people who doesn't like the newest game when it comes out, and right now that's Dark Souls Remastered, ask yourself, do I not like it because I'm bad at it? If you're bad at it, you can just keep playing. The point downs don't mean anything. Losses don't mean... None of it means anything. No one cares. No one cares if you lose. No one's keeping score. This isn't going to be at the big stage at EVO. No one cares. Alright? The biggest thing you're going to win at a Dark Souls 1 tournament is a $25 gift card at Applebee's. Or a fucking Olive Garden buy one, get one free appetizers gift certificate. No one cares. Just play the game, have fun, and figure it out. So you suck at it. And so you're losing to people you should be beating. So what? Who cares? You weren't good at the one that you like. You didn't get good at it in a day. You didn't get good at Dark Souls 3 in a day. You didn't get good at Dark Souls 2 in a day. You'll get better. You'll figure it out. I know it's super easy to say, man, I should have won that fight, and that guy had no idea what he was doing, and I still lost. Yep, that's going to happen. But you can just stick with it. You can just stick with it. These games come out used to once every year, you know what I mean? We have a long way to go before the next Soulsy game comes out. We're going to have to go through Setiko, Shadows Die Twice. We're going to have to go through all of that. We're going to have to go through that entire game's life cycle, promotion cycle, and everything. Alright? FromSoft, Miyazaki has said You know, the Souls-like, it's not gone. It's just on pause at the moment. But I mean, at best, it's 2018. Sedeco's going to come out in 2019. All right, so we're looking at like a Souls-like in what, 2020, 2020? Okay, you're going to have to go a long time without a game that has this sort of PvP. And this sort of, it's just, you know what I mean? It's just not going to be there. So if Dark Souls Remastered came out last month, 2 months ago, whatever, and you're already tapping out on it, and you're already done, it's, I hate it, don't like it, don't like backstabs, I don't like poise, you know, okay, have fun. Dark Souls 3 is only going to get slower and slower and slower and slower. Bloodborne's only going to get slower and slower and slower and slower. Dark Souls 2, same thing. It's just the way it is. Keep in mind, a large portion of these games' player base are just the typical casual player who's going to give it one run through, maybe 1 or 2 run throughs, and be done with it. So, as they pick up the game and play through it and then drop it, you know, and go on to something else, that's one less person hanging out in a Souls game that you're playing. And so, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you're like me, and these are pretty much the only games you play anymore, because, you know, Bethesda won't remaster Morrowind or re-release Morrowind, then what can you do? You know what I mean? Other than play and get good. What can you do? And that's for everybody. If you don't like Dark Souls PvP at all, if you've never given it a chance, really, outside of, like, you know, just the odd encounter here and there, or all you've ever tried to do is just, you know, hang out and, like, you know, gank with your friends or whatever, and you've never, like, tried it, you know, like, to be good at it, try it. If you're a Dark Souls 3 player and you're coming into Dark Souls Remastered and you've already bought it, I'm not telling you to buy the game, I'm just saying if you've already bought it and you've already given up on it, try it again. Like, you can, I went to a stream one weekend. It was a Pincognito stream. Shout out to Pinko. And he had a stream sniper who he kept invading. And this stream sniper was, you know, a Havelmom, Great Club, backstab fisher. And that's all they would do. And I kept invading that person, because I was trying to invade where Pinko was invading, you know. And I kept fighting that stream sniper. And then Pinko ended his stream, and then, you know, shout out to Ghost Hardware 25. His stream came on next, and Pinko raided him, and I headed over there, and Ghost Hardware was in the same area, and then when he would move, that stream sniper stayed with us and would move as well. And over the course of that weekend, over the course of that Saturday and that Sunday, I fought that stream sniper probably 10, 15 times. Alright, and the first time I beat that stream sniper, I used a falchion. And then the second time I beat that stream sniper, I used a claymore. And I kept telling myself, I was like, man, I cannot beat this guy with the Baldur's side sword. And then finally, the third time I beat that stream sniper was with the Baldur's side sword. I fought him just a few times, and I really paid attention to why I was losing. I didn't get mad, I didn't throw my controller, I didn't say this game's bullshit and all backstabs are terrible and poise is terrible. I didn't do any of that. I tried to understand. Why am I losing? What is beating me? And over the course of that weekend, that stream sniper kept hanging out, and I kept getting better and better and better and better, to the point where I could beat this guy. I could beat him pretty reliably. You know, I'm still not great. I'm still not great at this game, but I could beat that stream sniper. I could beat that build, and it was a strong build. It was you know, the Havelmom backstab Great Club. Never attacked unless he was going for the backstab. And I found a way to beat that with all the claymore and then the Baldur's side sword. The weapons I wanted to use to win. I found a way to beat that stream sniper with the weapons I wanted to use to win. I stuck with it and I figured it out. Now, if you just kept saying, "Oh, I'm tired of this, man. I'm tired of playing like this. I don't want to play this way," you know, then yeah, you're gonna you defeat yourself. You know, you don't learn anything. you can stick with it and you can learn something. You can figure it out. It's just a matter of if you're willing to lose a little bit. And we're not talking about a game with a huge skill gap here. The level of skill that separates the absolute beginner and, you know, the best player that ever lived is not that much. It's not that much. So for those of you who know how the game operates, you know, maybe you've done a bunch of Dark Souls 3 PvP, but you've never played Dark Souls 1 PvP. You know, you guys are like a fraction of an inch away from being able to hang with pretty much anybody. All you got to do is just, you know, stick with it and lose a few times. And for those of you who have never done PvP, ever, seriously, I know you look at people who do all this crazy shit and you think, man, what on earth is that? What is happening? But once you start to understand how latency affects the way video games play online, once you start to understand that, and that's all it is, it's just latency. It's just the distance between two players who are playing the same game. And that, of course, means that you're seeing two different things at the same time. One player's seeing one thing, one player's seeing the other. And when you start to understand that that's just how video games work, because you're not playing in the same room on, you know, player 1 and player 2 controllers anymore. When you start to understand that, it will all become clear, and it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to figure out latency. The worst meme that has ever happened in any Souls PvP game is lag and phantom range. If you want to see lag, play against somebody who's playing on really shoddy Wi-Fi and watch how their character just doesn't animate at all. Their character's gliding towards you like on roller skates. That's lag. That's a player playing on a bad internet connection, and probably an interrupted internet connection, right? That's lag. But getting backstabbed when you're looking someone in the face, it's not lag. That's latency. It's a different thing. And it's super easy to understand, and it's super easy to figure out. Just remember that what you're seeing on your screen is not the same thing your opponent is seeing on their screen. Your opponent is basically, you should treat your opponent like they're 1 second ahead of you. And in Dark Souls 1, you can be backstabbed in under a second. I understand how that can be frustrating, but it's that easy. That's really all the thing. That's all you have to get around. It's just that one little thing right there. So if you're new to the game, if you're new to the game's PvP, if you've already bought it and you've already said, I'm giving up on this, I don't like it, try it. Go out there and lose a little. It's for your own good. I can't recommend it enough. Because keep in mind, this is the last sort of opportunity that you're going to have to take part in PvP, which in my opinion is what makes these games super special, is the idea that players' games connect to each other in helpful and harmful ways. It's just a fantastic mechanic. It's unbelievable that a studio putting out, you know, a AAA game would do that. It's something special. This is something very special as far as video games go. And if you are talked out of it by yourself because you lose a few times, and because it's not, you know, it's not as easy as just beating a boss or whatever, you're talking yourself out of something really special. And I just don't want people leaving comments all the time that are like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, for no matter what PvP I'm doing, they don't like it. You know what I mean? There's always somebody out there who doesn't like it. And just in real talk, it's probably because you're bad at it. But to quote a cartoon dog, sucking at something is the first step towards being sort of good at something. And the more time you put into something, the better you get at it. But not only that, you also sort of get this Patty Hearst Stockholm Syndrome thing going on, where it means more to you, and you've sort of become a hostage to your own emotions. And I guess that's where I'm at. So maybe it's me. Maybe I just need to quit playing these games altogether. I've talked myself out of it. Later, y'all.